Well, I don't know whether we're on yet, but let me have a look and see what's going on here. Uh-huh. Kirsty Elizabeth entered the room. Perfect timing. I'm just going live. Don't want to keep the audience waiting. Ah, you've got like a still picture. What's going on? Have you frozen? Hang on. Let me put a thing up here. Ah, there she is. We're already live, so stop swearing. She can't hear me yet.
Oh, no, just come through.
All right.
All
Yeah,
right.
we're already live, so I just said stop swearing, Kirsty.
Good
Right,
job you
let me
said.
just I'll send you a link so it goes onto your thing as well. So I'll put if I put at Kirsty here, for example, and then we can just get stuck in at Kirsty. Come on now, Joseph. That's Kirsty. There you are, and I'll send that off to you. Now that should have gone to your page then, for your viewers from your page.
Let's have a look.
Oh, there's already a
Oh,
couple of
yeah.
scoundrels watching. Lynn Norledge, John Corpy, behave yourself, John. So let me get
Yeah,
comfy. The nice picture you've got there going on behind. It's like a constable thing.
that's the void.
Oh, the void. It's very void. Yeah, it's lovely. Lovely, the void. How are you?
Yeah, I think I'm okay. It's it's not massively energetic at the minute, so I'm hoping it's quite steady. But sometimes it has that feeling. It's a little bit eerie, like a stretched, as if the silence is stretched, and it's like a calm before the storm sense.
I
Do
know
you
it
know?
well. I agree entirely because it's been like hell the last week, particularly.
Yeah,
Found it really turbulent and sort of testing times.
I know. Well, we had the eclipse, the new moon eclipse,
Yeah.
and the whole of September has just been, for me, it's just been all about cleansing. And I've just been manic cleaning up and even like redecorating and clearing out big cupboards and wardrobes and craziness level. So I don't know how you've been about that, but I've had a lot of feedback from people saying they're feeling the same way. So
Yeah, loads of people. I think I mentioned it in the week. I call it like the feng shui of the soul, really. Or if you like, the feng shui of the mind to give the soul some space to sort of infiltrate our physical bodies. That's the way I'm seeing it now. Um, I've had I mean, I see this whole process, this great shift in consciousness as a cleansing thing, really. That's the great purge as far as I'm concerned. And I don't think this tidal wave that's coming in is sweeping away all the gunge, but it's sweeping all the stuff up to be seen and to be dealt with. And, the way I see it in a very clear way is that nobody's going to get away with anything because this is the truth vibration that's bringing with it, maybe things people don't want to look at, but we're being forced now, in my view, and I could be totally wrong. And I'd say to the people watching this, don't believe a single word I say unless it rings true with you, because this is just the way I see the world, you know. But I've had so many people onto me with regard to their relationships, whether that be relationships within the family, family relationships, workmate relationships, friends. They're all going through some sort of a conflict, generally speaking. But I see that's all part of this. Get the stuff out of the way, get everything onto the surface so it can be looked at, so that we can either go our separate ways or get closer together. I've got no idea what I just said there, but it's recording this. I'll have to play it back to see what I'm talking about.
I know. Uh, Sometimes when I'm writing things on the blog, I read it back and think there's no way I wrote that because I don't even know what that is.
Yeah. Yeah, I do that too. I mean, I call this, as you know, the editor. I don't let this come in now. I just like open me gob and try and sort of speak from the heart, really, whatever that means. It's just a feeling, and I think more and more I'm talking about people who are miserably happy. They're pretending to be happy on the outside, but they're desperate on the inside, really. And I think, people are getting more honest about why they feel so unhappy, why they are so desperate, and the need maybe to act in a different way. And I think in order to act in a different way, we've got to start thinking in a different way. But what I've understood, Kirsty, is that we don't have to think. It's not like cognitive behavioral therapy where we put a whole set of new instructions in. It's almost like the heart feeds you with new instructions, and then you act upon that information received. And a lot of the time, it goes against everything that we've ever believed. But this is a case of trusting our intuition now. And we'll find that our ego mind, our rational, logical mind will be screaming, "Oh, I've always done this. You can't possibly do that." And that's exactly what we need to do, something that we've never done before.
Well, I don't know if it's the age I've hit or if this is happening, whatever age you are, but I have never felt so strongly that this is a different world. I can't explain it very easily, but I've been dreaming all the time about things that happened to me in the past, all sorts of things, nice things, all, not just nightmares or horrible things, but lots of just remembering things, And when I wake up, I really get a sense of almost that was a previous life. And it's like I'm trying to work with a previous life, and I've got to understand that I've adjusted and that this is a new sort of spectrum that I'm working in. And that means it holds lots of opportunities. Now, as you know, but the reason that I've had this strange sort of set of awakenings in my life is because I was ill. I had to learn to rethink who I am and how I operate. And it's basically become a remastering of self, of like I was completely broken down, and now I'm being built up again. And I've had to really face, don't go backwards to old habits, because that was the road to the illness. And it's like that illness was teaching me how to turn a huge corner. To be honest, I don't think I could have done it without it, which is really weird to say. Do you understand that sort of sensation?
That's what's happened to me, really. I mean, I was told that unless I let go of all old ideas, emotions, and attitudes, unless I surrendered all those completely, because I went to see somebody, I mean, he's called a sponsor in Alcoholics Anonymous, and he said to me, "Joe," he said, "every time I say something to you to try and explain, you say, 'I know.'" And he said, "It's clear to me that you don't know anything at all because you've got to the point of trying to kill yourself. So all that knowledge you've got, all those qualifications, everything that you've ever learned, right, have accounted to nothing whatsoever." And I thought, oh my God, he's right. He said, "Well," he said, "why don't you just jettison everything that you know, clear your mind of all those things, ask for them to be." I said, "What do you mean, ask for them?" He said, "Well, what we're going to do now is we're going to ask the Great Spirit, right?" We're going to ask God. I thought, oh no, I've been trapped now. It's a cult. I'm in some sort of religious cult and they're going to get me. And he said, "No," he said, "call this thing what you like," he said, "but it's bigger, it's better than you, and it's more intelligent," he said, "because when I did this," and I can feel the prayer coming up now, and I don't do religion at all anymore, I do something called religiousness because that's a different feeling to me. But to me, religion is just like another set of rules and regulations. So I've jettisoned all those programs. But to get back to the story, he said to me, he said, "Get down on your knees." I thought, I've definitely got into some sort of religious cult here. He said, "Joe," he said, "I did this and it's worked for me." He said, "Why don't you just have a bash, right? See what happens, right?" So we knelt down and he said, "Say these words after me." I didn't know I was going to say this, but here we go again. God. I said, "God." He said, I offer myself to thee. I offer myself to thee to build with me and do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me, please, of this bondage of self, that I may better do your will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always. Kirsty, I got up the next morning. I haven't had the drink since, and that's coming up to 33 years. And what also left me was a huge weight off my shoulders, right? And every single day from then, I just tap on my shoulder and I just say, basically, thy will, not mine, be done. And I'm talking to my heart, right? And my life's improved in leaps and bounds. I mean, I still get difficulties to face, but I feel like I've got something else that's actually helping me to overcome these challenges, you know. And where it's led me is basically, it's taken me all over the world, talking about the things that we're interested in, like the vagus and the polyvagal system and the triune brain. And I didn't have a clue about any of these things. But what I'm trying to do now is I'm trying to be more scientific about what spirituality is really. And I'm trying to lead it now with almost like the neuroscience of spirituality. And it seems to be working. Got no
That's what
idea what
I
all that was about.
well, that's
Sounded
what I
all
want
right.
to ask you, because that's why I always love to connect with you, because I'm on a mission, as somebody who's absolutely thick about science, to try and understand um, what was the significance that when I was ill, my guide said to me, the reason you've been ill is because you're sensitive and you need to learn about it. So I've constantly been on this mission since then of what is this sensitive thing that they're on about? What led me to be sensitive, and then for that to lead to become that I couldn't get out of bed for months and months. What happened, and I know you and I have discussed the nervous system a lot, about the polyvagal theory and the vagus nerve. And we're one of the first set of people, you and I, talking online about this. Did you know that? Because I've been looking and following and trying to find this, because it was the thing I was given. And I was led to find you from your clip of you talking about your tests on the heart, getting the heart and the breathing to 6 breaths per minute. It was that's where I started with my guide. And you and I, back early 2019 and early 2020, were talking about the nervous system being the reason for ascension symptoms. And since that time, there's been loads of people talking about that. Suddenly that became very popular, and that became the answer. Now find lots of famous talkers just saying all about that. But that was very new when you and I first met, when I was first trying to discover all this. And so the path that I've been on, you've named the talk today, or you've put at the top, Mother Knows Best. And it's really interesting because I wanted to ask you where I'm at with what I'm trying to piece together about the mitochondria and epigenetics, polyvagal theory, and something called cell danger response, which all sound really boring and all about, oh, let's go and sit and do a lecture of scientific biology. But it isn't. It's actually very spiritual, and it's bringing spirituality into the physical body, because it's all very well for people to come on and onto these talks and talk about, well, your body's reading this and that from the universe, and it's triggering or whatever. But I wanted to know, come on, more than that. What is it? What's reading? What are you talking about? So I know you and I have already done a lot of talks about the nervous system and the polyvagal, and how it becomes into a stress state, and that causes the nervous system to become maladaptive, that it's out of sync and it's stuck in a response that it doesn't know how to get away from, which is a constant fear, a shout out of fear. And but the basic of my illness, and of a lot of people that seem to follow me because I talk about this, You know, not just people that are interested in spirituality. I've got a lot of followers who follow me because they want to understand about their body and recovering, and they want to see what I'm doing and have a go, you know, or hear what I've got to say and see how it fits. But what I'm wanting to ask you, this is how it's hitting me at the minute. So the mitochondria, you get your mitochondria in your cells from the mother, from your mother. So the mitochondria, which is the powerhouse, the energy of the cells, that is the mother lineage, right?
Yeah.
Epigenetics is explaining that we're not just victims of our genetics, of our genes. We're not just dumped on from whoever was in our ancestry, and now we've inherited this set of genes, and that means we have to behave like this or suffer certain health crises. The science now is saying that the epigenetics, which means additional to genetics, the overview, or an additional chemical reaction to the genetics, to the DNA responses, is all to do with the triggering of cells of what's happening in their environment. So if you look at Dr. Bruce Lipton's work, he explains that you are not victim to your genes. So this is how my parents and grandparents were, whatever. And they've identified with epigenetics that what you go through emotionally as a woman is passed through to the child. And they've identified that can go back to grandmother. So you could be influenced genetically, epigenetically, the additional chemical response to your environment based on a set of coding that you've been given from what your grandmother went through or your mother, because this is all coming through the mother line. And the science that I seem to understand is the reason for this is it's a natural fact to think that if a mother is in a certain environment, she needs to be bringing a child into that same environment. So the genetics physically passes so that the child is ready to deal with that environment. The trouble is that a lot of our environment is unhealthy or traumatic, should we say. And so the problem is that some of us may be inheriting epigenetic traits from mother or grandmother to do with what happened to them and how they coped and how they adapted to what their environment was teaching them. And so in my case, my grandmother was in World War II as a mother. So that means that got me thinking, what was her emotional state when she was bringing my family through? She was a mother with a baby that had to have a gas mask chamber, and she had to pump, she had to rush down. She lived in a city in Birmingham, which was constantly being bombed, and she had to rush down to the shelter, and she had 2 children under 5 and a baby to put these masks on and keep them on. I mean, that's a task in itself, isn't it? And and the panic of that, and on top of that, not knowing if her husband would return, if he was okay, or what was going on, what he was doing, So this is why I wanted to come and ask you, really. This is where I'm at, that if the genetics, if the mitochondria's part is the mother lineage, and you and I talk a lot about the mother as in the Holy Mother, or as in an energy of a loving, nurturing mother, whether you want to call that Mother Earth or some sort of spiritual mother. And can we feel that energy coming to us? Can we choose to tap into that lineage as a way of evolving better through traumas and emotional angst, if you like, emotional stresses? So that's what I've been looking at. Does that sound bizarre?
It's not at all. There's a lot in there, right? Can we change it? Yes, we can. I think that we're being forced to change it at the moment by letting go of all the fear. Because there's a phrase that says, fear, an evil and corroding thread, the fabric of our existence is shot through with it. That means our DNA is shot through with it. Well, it's actually not the DNA, it's the epigenome. And I see the epigenome as overcoats, layers of perception that are stopping our true soul's process. What's the word I'm looking for? Um, Expressing itself fully. See, I think that all of us see it's the X chromosome, the feminine chromosome that actually programs the mitochondria, and the mitochondria are to do with energy. And I think that it's also related directly to the way the vagus nerve works. To the way the vagus nerve works. Okay, so to, the Holy Mother energy that's coming through now. I'll just say in these words that are coming out. I think that the energy that's coming through, this great big cleansing energy, is a feminine cleansing energy from the Holy Mother herself. And I think it represents, there's a posh word if anybody wants to look this up. It's called trophotropic. 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 And that means nurturing, nourishing energy. So it's a feminine energy, right? And we can't discount the masculine energy here, but I think for eons of time, the masculine has actually suppressed and repressed the true feminine nature. And as a consequence, the feminine side of our nature has become very defensive and frightened and almost like victim-like, and it's been suppressed. I think what's happening now is that as now the lid's been taken off that side in all of us, and there's this new energy coming through now, not the frightened one. See, if I look at my own thing, I know that from an early age, it seems to be my mission to try and explain this to people, really. But my mum, God bless her, you know, she's still knocking about me mum. She's got dementia. She's in a nursing home round the corner. But she was frightened. She was brought up as a child in the war, and they had to run round to the local railway station, which was deep underground, right? And they actually left her there one night. They forgot her when they went back to the house and stuff like this. But that's not the point I'm making. The point I'm making is my mum got pregnant with my brother, right? And she went full term. And Terence, that's my brother's name. I never met him. It was before me. He died at 2 days old, you know, so he was an infant cot syndrome. Now, there was some worry about Irish Roman Catholics and the way Terence was born and the time he was born, and all that sort of thing. I'm not going to go there. But I was the next one in line, you know. It was Josie, you know, get back on the horse and do it again. You know, that Roman Catholic stuff that they do, right? So I'm the get back on the horse and do it again. Now I know because I've talked to my mum at length about this. She was terrified carrying me, absolutely terrified, you know. And I know that all her emotional state, right, will have been the environment that I was developing in, you know, as an embryo, as a fetus. So her fear, her biochemistry, all that stuff in her amniotic fluid would have been the environment that I grew up in, which would have been influenced the way my cells were working. And therefore my epigenetic profile, right, was being developed in the womb. And I came out as I was 6 weeks premature. I was 4 weeks, 6 weeks premature, 4 pounds, right? I was born with scoliosis, congenital hip dysplasia, and respiratory distress syndrome, right? This chap that you see here. So I was born with all those. Now, Kirsty, it's possible that I chose that myself pre-incarnation. I don't know the answer, you know, but the point is, I know that I am the product of a fearful mother, right? And when I came out, she hung on to me and she protected me, right? And as a consequence, she didn't let me experience life in the full. She basically guarded and guided me, right? And when my brother Brendan was born, he was born perfectly okay, physically up, he was strong and all that. He could go and play out, but my mum wouldn't let me, you know. So this was my life. Anyway, I digress, right? There's all this biochemical stuff going on in my development. And so therefore, I'm born as a highly sensitive child, right? And I know now that I've got, because I was very clumsy, dyspraxia, right? I couldn't learn anything under pressure, right? I had dyspraxia, dyslexia, and dyscalculia because I was afraid all the time, really. And then as the time went on, right, this is like Joe's story, but as the time went on, right, um, my mother wouldn't let go of me. And then at some age, about 13 or 14, I discovered alcohol, right? And it changed my life completely. It gave me the ability, the Dutch courage to stand up for myself, to break free from my mother, and really to engage in in society. Because before that, I was afraid of people. I couldn't go in any social circumstance because I didn't know how to talk to anybody. It was horrendous, you know. So here's the thing I'm getting to, and we've talked about this before. Because I was a highly sensitive child, a HSP, a highly sensitive person, so they used to be called sensitives. You're one of these as well, and probably most of the people who listen to this are highly sensitive people. I developed ducking and diving and dodging and weaving characteristics to cope with life, right? And I became a control freak. And what I did was I would try and control and manipulate all the external circumstances to keep me safe, right? Are you with me? And this
Yeah.
is you know, and this is the thing. I became a control freak and basically a secondary narcissist, right?
Yeah.
Because if things didn't go, and I know this about most highly sensitive people, right? Like myself, thought I was a special case, you know what I mean? I'm a special person, you know. Sad, I was really sad, special, and different, you know. Stress, anxiety, and depression, seasonal affective disorder. So I was very prone to negative emotion because I was afraid all the time. That's why I tried to manipulate everybody and everything to keep my emotional state secure. And what actually happened was, as the years went on, I became less and less capable of manipulating external circumstances. And the drink took hold of me then. And that was basically my way of escaping. You know, I've gone all over the place here, but in the end, as you know, I tried three serious attempts to take my own life. And that didn't work either, you know, failure all the way around. But in the third attempt, and hopefully my last attempt, something happened to me of a spiritual nature, right? And it was almost as if the peace that passeth all understanding descended upon me, right? And for the first time in my life, there was no movement in my head at all. In fact, I understood for a split second, which seemed like an infinity. I understood exactly how the cosmos worked. There was almost like a statistical equation, right, that proved everything, right? And I almost got like lowered back down to earth with a feeling that said, son, first of all, if you can't take a joke, you shouldn't have signed the form. And I thought, oh, very funny. You know what I mean? And they said, what we're going to do now is we're going to turn you around, kick you off the bottom, and we're going to show you one step at a time and one breath at a time how to do this without any external substances, because it's got to be done from within, right? And that's what I've done now for nearly 33 years of my life, right? But what it's led me to, Kirsty, is, you know, I did a PhD in this. It became about mindful breathing. And that technique that I showed you and have showed other people that's the sort of key to getting back from the outside and to opening the gates of your heart again. And I think where the world works, it works on intellect and knowledge. But where the solution is it on intuition and knowing. And I think once the gates of your heart open and you start to live a more heart-centered life, the information comes up and is almost presented to you on a plate from one moment to the next in the present moment. And just let me finish on this. And I think from a mindful breathing point of view, and I know Shanine's looking here, Shanine's got all sorts of techniques now that are coming to her, breathing techniques that you can actually direct and start to clear up your own body and where you're hanging on to stuff. I've said loads of different things there, but we can refine that as we go along.
Well, I've written down here that in the embryo, the nervous system is created by the skin on the back of the embryo turning in on itself and creating a spinal cord and a brain. So your nervous system comes from your initial outer membrane, if you like, as an embryo. And in terms of trying to work out, people are trying to understand what, when we say we're feeling something from energy, and we're talking about people like myself who suffer flare-ups of illness through that, you know. So if we have a solar flare, a big solar flare, there'll be a number of people that I'm friends with on Facebook will be saying, oh, I'm whacked, or they'll be saying they've got migraine or joint inflammation or whatever, you know. And I see it following the science, if you like. It can also be that sensitive people can actually behave like that to weather pressure and the atmospheric conditions. So it's not just cosmic, you know, it depends on your sensitivities, what you're picking up on. But trying to explain to people this is something real, this is not just waffling, you know, floaty spiritual woman coming on talking floaty rubbish. You know, I'm trying to find some actual science to it and to actually get people to understand what's happening. And it's the answer is to how you're reading energies and responding to them is called signal transduction. And it's how the cell is triggered by an outside environmental, invisible, if you like, I always call it the invisible energies. There's actually touching it, you know, reaching into your cell and triggering it to have a response. And so this is what is causing the ascension symptoms. It's not a made up thing that the spiritual people are trying to win everybody, you know. It's not a cult that we're trying to say, come on, join us and you can have ascension symptoms and it means you're going all the way, you know. It's not just that. It's a real scientific phenomenon that really needs to be stated, and it's to do with the evolution of humanity. And you know you know a little bit about what I talk about, but most of the things I say are that we are eternal, that this Kirsty body is just the moment as I'm presenting at the moment, and I go through the cycle of age with it. But then I evolve and I leave this body and I pass back over, and then I decide what I've got to do next. So I'm always saying to people, anything you're trying to do and understand for you, even if you're 99 years old, is not lost. You know, it's all your legacy and it will all be picked up. Everything you do and learn in this life will benefit you in the future, in future lives. So that's always my theory. But in terms of trying to find something scientific with that, my messages have always been that what we're going through, the reason why we're in a tough space on Earth, we're seeing this huge change on Earth, but humanity is changing. We are evolving, and we're evolving because we're picking up signals of an invisible change around in the environment or the atmosphere. And that is what is causing these ascension symptoms. That is what sets people off into these flare-ups of their illnesses, because their illnesses are closely related to the fight and flight theory of the nervous system. So it's the nervous system that's reading the messages from the cells. The cells are receiving the message and they're sending out the message, you know. And for somebody like me or you who has lived in a state without knowing it, we've lived in a state of angst, of being cautious. That's what sensitivity can be if it's not understood. And so we've been trying to get along in the world, trying to make everyone happy and jolly if we can, but actually we've suffered for it, and it hits a brick wall. In your case, it was your you know, desperate acts that hit the brick wall. And in my case, it was, right, you can't walk now, you can't lift your arm up, that's it, you know. And you have to stop and think. And there's so many people that now follow me who understand that and are going through that or have been through it. for different reasons. Some of them have been in life-changing accidents and are trying to, you know, I've got a couple of very close friends that follow my work that are trying to recover from brain injuries, from serious accidents. It's completely changed them. And they're trying to use all these theories and these understandings, as well as their spiritual sense of trust and faith, to find a way forward. So I think that the reason the sensitive community is being, you could say that we're being targeted, because sensitivity is a part of evolution. It's meant to be the shout out, the canary in the coal mine that shouts out, stop, toxins, danger, this is poisonous, or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's gone so much beyond that, because humans are now so far changed in terms of their psychology and their understanding of self and of what being a human is. And, you know, we're actually, I think you said it on your last talk, we're too clever. I think you said the word clever clogs. That made me get, like, I had a little laugh, because it's what I've been thinking. We've got to slow down and go back to the basics of evolution. And how we evolved was, we were all millions of years ago a bit of bacteria floating around, and then one day one bacteria engulfed another, and then we had a chain reaction of the oxygen. And that we've all come from that background. That's going on within us all the time. So I think that humanity is going through this huge evolution. It's hitting us through our cellular system. The nervous system is reading it. And those people who are susceptible to feeling fear, which it seems to be a growing number in the actual environment that we're in, or in the deliberate environment that we're placed in, if you like, there's a deliberate attempt to put people on their edge. What I found that I suffered from, which, coming back to my message of mitochondria, when your nervous system is on constant hypervigilance, your cells can't cope. They think there's massive danger. And if you're like that enough, the mitochondria will receive the message, stop giving energy. And that's called cell danger response. And it stops the energy production in the cells, because it's ready to fight a virus or whatever it thinks the body's waiting for something, you know. And this is what I believe happened to me, because at the beginning, when I couldn't walk around and I couldn't eat, because my digestive system gave in as well, because everything just stopped, you know. It just was a complete actual nervous wreck, if you like. And I had to learn to drink and eat very slowly. I had to go back to the absolute basics to build up to, you know, and to try and understand, look, you've been living all this time getting on, trying to do this, do that, go here, go there, be this, be everybody else, but you haven't understood your own body's messages to you. It's never been in sync with what your mind is trying to be, you know. And actually there's a need to address some physical symptoms, so that mitochondria stopped sending energy and I had no energy. Not only does it stop producing energy, but it also stops the cycle of, you know, what do you call, like, regurgitating energy, like recycling energy.
Yeah.
So you feel like a stone, your body, you know, and you feel, actually it must be what it must feel like before you're going to die, because you just feel, you know, you've got nothing in you. And people are saying to you, look, this is a psychological thing, you know, put yourself together, or, you know, don't be anxious and all this. But your work on the breath and the breathing put the two together. So I was able to calm down my mind through meditation and breath work. That then sent the body messages of calm and safety. And you know about the safe and social side of polyvagal theory. Yeah. So putting my body back into safe and social, even if it was just for a minute. And so this is now nearly 6 years ago. It's coming up for 6 years next month. So I'm still on the journey, still trying to spin it round. But what I'm trying to understand is, the mitochondria is the mother. And you just said the exact same words. the history that we've lived in, the mother has been, first of all, persecuted, or the feminine has, and secondly, suppressed. You said both of that yourself just now. And I believe that the Holy Mother Mary, her story is suppressed. And I believe that currently in the world, she's used hugely and persecuted in her own way, to advantages of other cultures or other ideologies, or even dark forces. So I had this sudden thought that I wanted to ask you, all of this pressure on this mother, this safe and social, if you like, this nurturing, this light that is coming in, that's delivering hope, that's changing us for the better, that's giving us the way forward. Why is it being attacked like it is? And, you know, how do we find our way out of it?
Okay, my go. I'm working on something called chromatooptogenetics. I'll explain that in a minute. And magnetohydrodynamics. Okay. And the thing about epigenetics is people get this wrong. Epigenetics is the way that the autonomic nervous system is receiving signals, but there's an intermediate bit that people are missing out on, and it's called our perception. So it's the perceptual filters that direct the information. And like I said to you probably on our first thing, I'm dealing with psycho, neuro, endocrino, immunohematology. And the first bit, the P, is to do with perception. And we all see the world in slightly different ways. Okay, so the information that you're receiving will be seen slightly different from my viewpoint and stuff like that. So the epigenetics is about perception. It's not about what the environment's doing to us. It's about how we perceive and receive the signals from the environment that determines what's sent to the... So you talk about transduction. Now, you mentioned cytoskeleton as well, or the way that this great big sheath, this embryonic sheath is laid. I got clearly shown that at the moment of conception, there's a snapshot of these stars. Okay, so this is not planetary astrology. This is called Vedic astrology. Right, and it really about the stars, not the planets, that are important. And it was this, so I got a snapshot of this, like a Polaroid of the connective tissue. That is exactly how our personal connective tissue is imprinted with the position of stars. That then guides the energy then that comes in from our mind. So it comes from soul to mind, the mind to brain, the brain to the nervous system to the endocrine glands. The endocrine glands then secrete biochemical substances into our bloodstream that impact upon our cell membranes, that impact then upon how the nucleus picks up that information. Now, DNA doesn't do anything itself. It only does in the manner that it's acted upon by the signals that are received. Are you with me so far? Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the biochemistry will determine our mood state then. So it's really our mood state that's important. So if I'm feeling emotionally disturbed, it must be because our biochemistry contains a lot of defensive enzymes and defensive hormones, right? How can I tell that my body's in that state? By the way that I feel. And if I feel emotionally disturbed and tense, it means that my ego, right, has picked up a threat of some sort. Kirsty, this is what we're up to now. This is what I feel, is to become more body aware and more aware of how this energy is flowing through us. If there's an obstruction in our body, call it an ascension symptom. It's a lesson that needs to be learned, right? Okay. And not to, and sometimes it's a lesson we can just see what it is, and then it will de-obstruct and the energy will come back into our system, thereby empowering us. But sometimes, Kirsty, and this is what people don't want to hear, right? Sometimes it's not just seeing it. Sometimes we've got to take an action on it. And if we've been a sensitive, ducking and diving, head working, sensitive person, where we've always been a people pleaser and said, yes, I'll do that for you. Sometimes we've got to start saying, no, I'm sorry, right? Because this is a direct reflection of how much we love ourselves and how much self-worth we've got. And if we keep saying no when we really mean yes, we're going to start to get sicker and sicker. And in this environment that's going on now, because this in yoga, this is called the Kali Yuga, and we're being forced to move to a better way of thinking. And it's not just about consciousness, it's about conscientiousness as well. So this is about conscience now. So there's a whole great big moral thing coming in now. And we're being showed by the Holy Mother the way to act. We're being shown now. You've done this all your life. I've left you to your own devices. You've made the right mess of it. And this is her talking to the masculine as well. This is the way it's done now. So from now on, I'm the boss. I'll give you the information, act upon it, and then see what comes then. I've said a lot here now, but in the end, if we're pointing the finger to something outside of ourselves, we're missing the point that I, self, me, these three fingers are coming back at us to say, how am I allowing this? What have I got to do, right? And what have I done in the past, right? So we're dealing now not only with our own personal karma, we're also dealing with our ancestral karma. And we're almost putting through all the cultural things that have led us to be here. We're rewriting the script of that past as well. I'm nearly finished now. So this is about removing the epigenetic shrouds, like the layers of an onion. And every time we do that through some sort of courageous action, more power and energy flows in, our mind expands more, and we start to understand what this world's all about. Where I'm up to in my understanding now is this is the path to peace of mind. And the path to peace of mind is beyond the human mind. It's beyond memory, it's beyond patterns, it's beyond programs, and it's beyond conditionings. And that's where we're all heading for now. Some places call that oceanic consciousness, where we dissolve back into the womb of the Holy Mother. In nomine Patris et Filio et Spiritu Tui Sancti. Or Kirsty, something like that.
Well, as soon as you started talking, and then just all the way through, on your science, I'm just seeing the image of Guadalupe. Do you know the image I'm talking about of Mary at Guadalupe?
Yeah.
And the that image is on the tilma of the what was his name? I've forgotten it all now. But the native of that land in Mexico that she appeared to, he took the tilma to the bishop as proof, and when he opened it, not only did the roses fall out that he'd found she'd told him to go and find in the garden in December in the snow, and there was a garden of roses as proof, but also the tilma had the image of her, and that image has now that we've got in the age of technology, has been studied and has found so much information in it, including how it is a map of the stars at that time, and how it is actually giving information through the star system. If you look at that, if you go and find that, there's lots of stuff on that on the internet. It's fascinating. Also, there's information on, they zoomed right into her eyes, and there's all pictures of people. There's a whole family, it's all families of people in the pixels, what we would call pixels now. Of course, you know, they didn't have the technology to see all that 500 years ago.
Well,
So
I keep getting, sorry to butt in while I'm sitting, because I keep getting it about family constellations as well. So there's a lot of cultural stuff coming up. So there's the constellations of the families and the stars and stuff like that. But also we're going through a time now of mother and daughter. That's the two moon thing that's just gone on. The moon itself and the daughter, you know. So there's a mother and daughter connection that's going on. There's so much going on right outside. That's just a reflection of the projection that's coming inside from inside of all of us, you know. It's fascinating this. As you say, I think we've got to sit in the middle and let this exteroceptive stuff come in from outside, but also these interoceptive things as well. Can I just go back to, there's a dorsal vagus, there's a dorsal ventral vagus, you know, and then there's the ventral, there's dorsal and ventral. Dorsal is the back, ventral is the front, right? The dorsal vagus is associated with the reptilian mind, the reptile side of it, the lizard brain. And highly sensitive people are actually in that, that in hypervigilance all their life, right? Until some sort of a trauma or some sort of a drug or alcohol or something temporarily removes them from that. And then that's why people get addicted to this stuff, because it's causing the lizard to let go for a while. And then, you know, and that's the whole thing. It's an energetic process. So at one level, this is all about energy, the movement of energy. Just to say that magnetohydrodynamics that I was talking about, the feminine energy is magnetic. It's a magnetic energy. The masculine energy is electric. The electric energy works through the nerve fibers, but the magnetic energy works around them. And so people in modern medicine, they won't accept this magnetic flow. Well, they're starting to now. But what's actually happening is the magnetism, it's called the charismatic energy. It comes from the heart. This magnetism energy is increasing. And what it's doing is, as the magnetic energy moves along the nervous system, it's increasing the flow of electrons in the nerves, which are then impacted upon the organs and the muscles of the body. That's why we're feeling pain, because we've still got the defensive resistance in our musculature, in our inside organs, in our bones, in our stem cells. As you say, that's the defensive thing that we've got to let go of. Here's the big thing that I've learned, Kirsty, and lots of people don't want to hear this, is we have to let go of our need to know what's going on, our need to know, right? And just be glad to just receive. I'm getting a big thing right up my spine here, as though this is dead important. This is let go of what's coming up, let go of what's gone before. You will be shown these things, but please accept the information as it emerges, one breath at a time, and act upon the information received. And if you say, well, why, what's going to happen? You'll probably get this angelic chorus saying, you don't need to know right now, just take the action. And of course, a defensive ego doesn't want to hear that. And that's just tough luck, I'm afraid. Over to you, my love.
Well, epigenetics is about action, because it's
Is
the
it?
action that we take that changes our chances of better health, and you know, the type of lifestyle that we decide to live, and the diet that we have, um, our exposure to stress, and the way we deal with people, you know, and places. That's what epigenetics is. So it's like you said, it's the action that makes the improvement. So if all of the epigenetics is about perception, currently we are perceiving a huge split of worlds, if you like, that even my dad, who is a hardened 3D thinker, liver, believer, you know, still watches BBC News for what's going on. Even he has started to notice and say that he's noticed, you know, the changes in the world. The world's a different place. So the split of 3D to 5D, as they call it, which I think is a very basic numbing down of, you know, huge, what we've discussed, everything we've discussed, every single word we've said between us is huge as part of it. Just saying it's 3D to 5D is just a washover, but at least it gets people on board with some sort of vision, because epigenetics is about vision. And so if you are envisioning a life and then you action ways that you think will get towards it, then it manifests. That's the message. That's how Bruce Lipton describes it anyway. So therefore, putting that into context of myself, trying to get back on my feet and be in the world again, I've had to go into a different world, a world that I was not aware of before I was ill. So I went downhill into a big dip and then hit the brick wall. And now I'm breaking the wall down and trying to rebuild a new path out of it. And the way to do that is to work out the actions that I should take that will be better for me. In my world, it's about my health. But for other people, it can be all sorts of different things. So epigenetics is about vision. It is about perception, and all the shadow work that we've been doing about breaking down our perceptions and understanding who we really are, and the world, trying to see that, hello, the world is only what you're making it. And what am I making it then, and why? And this has been a big journey that the last 10 years has seen. Well, really, even post-COVID, it's become huge when you see work about trauma, and recovery from trauma has become a big thing all of a sudden. And this is all to do with the understanding, working alongside the epigenetics, the evolution that it's trying to take us on. And so to me, the whole thing, putting all this together to try and piece a story of, I'm trying to understand, why did my guide appear to me and tell me this at the same time as he wanted to tell me many other things about working towards a new earth and all sorts of things. So I'm trying to piece, the whole thing comes to one pinpoint, one bit of a cell somewhere. The whole information is all in one. So therefore, it's all related. Everything that I'm going through, in terms of trying to get my health back, making choices, understanding what was wrong for me, seeing what I used to see and trying to change it, trying to change my behavior, my reactions, my responses, my thoughts about other people and the way I operate. All of that is working towards the new world, the new earth, because the only way to get to the new earth is to allow the dark that's splitting away to drop. Unfortunately, we are currently at a time when that thought is so fearful to people. At this point where we're at, where we're starting to see people say things are going to happen, and they do, and it's frightening people. Actually, we're being tested hugely, because this is our own problem anyway. Overcoming deep fears and fears of reality and perception. And that's the point of challenge that we're currently at, in my opinion.
I agree. This is where I'm up to with that. And I've been working with some tough people over the last few years. And I've asked questions like, but what about all the child abuse? What about all the savagery? What about this, that, and the other? What about the floods in America? What about the fires in Australia and all that? And the people I work with, and I've become this person myself, they say, and what's that got to do with you? Right. It's a distraction. It's taking your energy away from the job that you've been given. So let other people deal with that. At the moment, all you need to do is just sit and ask for the next piece of information that you need to act upon. And in that way, Kirsty, we get brought from the past and the projection to the future. We get brought right into the now moment, as they call it. And that's where true peace of mind is, when you're actually acting upon your soul's purpose from one moment to the next. Nothing else is important. And when that becomes most important to you, that's when you'll find your peace of mind. See, I know for a fact that for me, life now, the success story of life now is to have peace of mind. It's to have peace of mind. It's what you do that will give you fulfillment, not what you imagine. Because imagination, you said envisioning, that's a different thing. Envisioning to me is the information that you're given, right, one piece at a time. Imagination it can be a trap. This is what I want. What about this? This happened to me in the past. I've got to do this in the future. That to me is a trap, right? Because one day you might have to stand up for yourself, and the next day you might have to back down. If you can't do either of those things, then once again, you're still trapped. So this is a journey into fearlessness, and you can only overcome fear, in my opinion, in the now moment, right, in a focused state. Otherwise, nothing ever changes. And that's the difference to me between what is revolution. Revolution means that you working past future, right? And evolution is where you're working now, 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 now. Here's the next thing. If you sometimes listen to external coaches, not that I'm knocking them, it depends where they're getting the information from, but sometimes a coach might say, oh, you need to work on your aerobic fitness now, right? Or you need to go on a vegan diet, or you need to do this. Kirsty, in the now moment, being guided, right, you might need to eat a beef burger because that's just what your body requires. And then if you've got some sort of a standard template of I'm a veganism, I can't have this, that, and the other, it's always referring again to a pattern that's in your memory. This has got to be beyond memory, beyond patterns, and working in a place that we've got no idea what's coming up. Final thing, I know I'm going on, but it's got to be in the sequence of and disentangling that's given to you by your intuition, not some external thing. Because sometimes your ego might come in and say, well, I can't see how that's going to work, but I suppose I better follow it. And what happens is it's like cross training. You work on your left ear and your right big toe gets better. See what I mean? It's fascinating, but really it comes down to faith and trust. But you can have all the faith in the world, but unless you take action on it, right, which is trust, right, nothing ever changes. Because faith without works is dead. That's an old Christian saying. But it means that God or the angels or the ETs or the extra dimensionals, they'll give you the information and then they'll say, and by the way, here's the shovel, start digging. And that's what we've got to do. We've got to keep digging. Christ, I've gone on there like some sort of a nutter, but never mind.
No, you're not a nutter. So yeah, well, I'm just thinking then, well, as you know, I mean, you know, my story is that I saw Saint Faustina, and obviously that has had a huge influence on my trying to work out what this is all about, because she's obviously a Catholic nun. And everything you try to find out about her is obviously going to be from that perspective. And yet what I hear from her doesn't always match, which is interesting. But trying then to think of what was it that Jesus achieved when he healed the sick in that one moment. You know, how can we actually get ourselves to that point? And it's got to be a frequency, like you say, of trust and faith. And it's got to be moving away as much as possible from the fear factor, which is very challenging, as we said at the minute. But then you see the mother energy, if you think about Lourdes, Mother Mary's associated with Lourdes, and that's all about water being healing. So therefore, I feel that we're being asked to be in flow and to be flexible, to change state as and when the environment cools, if you like. And I think perhaps the understanding of water within the body and within the cells is a further science to actually give us some proper answers later down the line.
Well, that's what magnetohydrodynamics is about. Okay. It's about something called the fourth phase of water. Okay.
Yeah.
And so if your customers want to look up the fourth phase of water, and that's the information, and that's what guides this magnetic energy through the way it changes pH. So we got pH, we've got hydrogen and oxygen, so we got positive and negative. That's the fourth phase of water. Is a superconducting liquid. And anybody who's trying to obstruct this process of the world waking up would cause the water to become toxic with chemicals that block that process, if you catch my drift, right? And they may also want to try and stop the natural sun's radiation coming through as well by deflecting those signals to stop the full strength of them coming through, if you catch my drift, right? And they might want to put stuff into our food as well to make that toxic. So that actually causes a toxic biochemical environment to stop the cell, information reaching our cells, our stem cells in a particular way. So not only is this about a great big purge, but it's also about us individually cleaning our act up. Not worried about anybody else's, because each soul is responsible for brushing its own side of the street. And that's really difficult, because in order to not face our own stuff, sometimes we can keep interfering and telling other people what they should do, right? But if we don't practice ourselves, people are going to get quicker and quicker more ill and more dis-ease. And dis-ease is simply feeling ill at ease with ourselves, because we're not actually aligned with our soul's purpose. And that's where I'm up to, Kirsty. And I could change my mind next week, and this could all be bollocks what I'm talking about here now, right? But it could be true as well. And I think in the end, the golden fleece comes when you've got complete peace of mind. And peace of mind is inversely proportional to expectations, meaning the more expectations you have about the way things are going to turn out, the less peace of mind you've got. So it's best to live without any expectations at all, just a feeling of open and flowingness and trusting that you'll be given what you need at the time that you need it in order to take action on it. And that's where I'm up to. I don't know what's coming up. People say to me, I've said this thing before, what's your 5-year plan? It's just a big laugh to me because I haven't got a 5-minute plan because I'm not planning my life now. I'm just allowing my intuition to give me the actions to take next. Do I make mistakes all the time? I'm only learning myself. Like I've said before, I only feel like I'm just scratching the surface of what's possible here. But more and more people are starting to understand this now, that we've almost been imprisoned and slaves, really, enslaved by social conditioning that took us away from who we essentially are. And now that's not being left, it's not being allowed anymore because the Holy Mother is coming through to give us each individual information to disentangle us from the traps that we've set ourselves. Christ, the
Yeah.
Pope's here, the preacher's here. What can he do? What can they do?
And that's why I think I'm finding a lot of people expressing that they've found the need to be quite isolated, or it's isolation has been sort of put on them in their current circumstances. That we seem to be needing to pull back and have a lot of our own time. I think it's because we're waiting to watch what will be the falling away of all the challenge, and the challenge is the world that tells people what's your 5-year goal.
Yeah.
I remember that when I first started teaching, my first interview in the 1990s was, how do you see yourself in 5 years? I'm like, well, I've just got out of college, do you mind?
But I think people are waiting to see things fall away. But in my view, it doesn't work like that because we've got to take the action that releases us. So almost like
Yeah,
hanging on and hoping the world's going to change is probably
yeah,
again, maybe possibly not the right way to be looking at things really. I just think if we're given a job to do on a daily basis, it's like when I wake up, I've got an employer. The employer's all powerful, right? Right. It's got all the power, it's got all the information, it's got everything. It knows exactly what we need to do. So it says, why don't you just do this today? And also enjoy it because this is what you were born to be. And this is the reason that you're here. And I think that that's where the joy of living comes. It's challenging, but when you apply your own innate abilities to it and skills, so I've got my own, you've got yours, somebody else has got different ones. When we all put those together, it like meshes in this great big dodecahedron. That's how I see it. And these 12 latch onto another 12 and another 12 and another 12, and the whole world gets covered in this dodecahedron. And then when we've learned Earth's game, we might zoom off to then Jupiter's. I don't know, Kirsty, I don't know. So just to wrap up then, my love, and thank you very much for coming on and stuff like that. I've got no idea what we've talked about, but we'll just have to see what happens on the next one. But I feel like if we can just keep focused and our heart open and flowing, what we need to know will be given to us on a need to know basis. I really feel that. And it's inspired now. And I've also, here's a word for people as well. I believe that the divine is actually the feminine. It's the feminine womb. It's a dark space, right? And I think everything comes from that. It's a total potentiality out of which everything comes. And also, I don't think it needs a male injection to start it because I think the Immaculate Conception doesn't need that male injection. So, in actual fact, it's not the spare rib, right? It's exactly the other way around. So my mind's starting to be changed. It's called parthenogenesis, it's called. And that's, if anybody wants to look at that up, parthenogenesis. It's where in the beginning was the word, and it was a feminine whisper of wisdom. Like a poetic thing, that wasn't it?
Well, the mother is the Holy Mother Mary is the Immaculate Conception. She is the conception. Not people. People misunderstand and think it's the child Christ Jesus. It isn't. It's her.
Right.
She is the most pure form of anything. That's where we're trying to get to. That's what the big cleansing is. That's what we're all. That's why we're safe in her hands, because she has no darkness, no shadow. She's purest form, and of course you know that she passed awake. You know, she passed, ascended.
Yeah.
She didn't pass away. She was taken into her place into heaven. So she holds that position as Queen of Angels, Queen of Heaven, as absolute purity and complete kindness, compassion that humanity could never contemplate. And that's what we're all trying to get to.
Yeah. I think they call that, what did they call that? The consumption, was it? I think it was called the consumption. Where she
Assumption.
ascended,
The
yeah,
Assumption.
the Assumption, not
Yeah.
consumption. So I always think of the food in my belly, you know what I mean? So it's about we're being guided to a more sort of internal morality. I've got a long way to go, you know, but I'm I'm willing to be prompted when needed, really. So the joy of living as our theme, it's about lightheartedness, but not stupidity. That's the way I see it, really. And I think the more open and flowing and the more lighthearted we can be, the more the information comes, the more that we can act upon it, the more power and courage we get to carry on and go forward. So that's how I see it, you know. But as I say, that might all change tomorrow. Who knows? We'll wait and see.
Well, thank you for answering all and thinking on my where I'm at. It's been really helpful. I'm going to have to listen to this a number of times because there's so much information in it that you've been given. So thank you so much.
It's a pleasure, Kirsty. Lovely to see you. And we'll do another one further down the line, I think, shall we?
We shall.
If it be the will of the mother.
Yeah.
Thanks very much, everybody. I hope that you've enjoyed that. I have. And speak to you soon. Bye bye.